This is Jilliana Ranicar-Breese, and I'm here in Orgiva in Spain at Cortijo Romero for Christmas. And I have the pleasure of meeting Malcolm Palle, who, although he's English, he is currently living, or perhaps permanently, going to be living in Gibraltar. Malcolm, tell me why and how you got to Gibraltar.
Mostly through my business and my work. My professional life took me out there. I'm involved in an area of financial services and technology. It's where they meet, and particularly the work I do is with cryptocurrencies, and this is a new kind of form of money.
Like Bitcoin.
Yes, everyone knows Bitcoin, and that's
Bitcoin.
Really,
yes.
Bitcoin is the bellwether, for that. And Gibraltar is very welcoming to this technology, and it's creating a hub there, and that's the short version of why I ended up moving to Gibraltar.
Yeah, that's not what we're going to talk about, though. We're going to talk about young Malcolm. Not that you're old, although actually you're older than you look, but anyway, we won't be talking about your age. But you grew up in London, presumably a conventional background, but I want you to tell me how comedy influenced your life, when you were a teenager.
Yeah, I think I've always been drawn to, I love making people laugh if I can, and that sort of disarms people. I think, if I was to look to the root of it all, when I was young, when I was going to school, I didn't go to particularly good school, as some people would refer to, what some people would call a particularly good school, but nonetheless, it was a comprehensive in South London, in Brixton, and I wasn't one of the biggest guys in the school, so I found that I could...
Did you say you were from Streatham?
Streatham, yes.
That's right, yes.
Yeah.
My late husband came from Streatham. Yeah.
So I found that I could, through humour, I created bonds and got myself out of difficult situations. No one tends to pick on people who can make them laugh, because humour is very disarming. And
were you bullied at school?
No more than or less than anyone else. It was a tough school, so I don't think anyone who I wasn't particularly picked on,
right,
specifically, or to the extent that it was causing me more trauma than any other kid. But that said, that was the time, that was the place, and that the environment growing up in the 60s and 70s.
So what comedy shows, presumably on TV, were influencing you?
Well, you sort of, with 3 channels or 2, when it started, just BBC One, BBC and ITV, then BBC 2 came along. So you took whatever you got. We didn't really have a rich mix of comedy to choose from. So I just, whenever something was on that made me laugh, also made my father laugh, we'd watch it. So I just remember the early programmes we watched were even sort of Sunday night at the London Palladium. There would be a comedy act on, and he.
What you mean, like Morecambe and Wise?
Well, that kind of thing, sure. And then there was various other.
Jimmy Jewell and Ben Warris.
That was a little bit before me.
Oh,
I
right,
think.
Okay.
But I would say Mike and Bernie Winters.
Oh yes, yes.
You remember them, and all anything that was designed to make you laugh would be something that I would expose myself to, and I would hone in on, rather than a long drama.
Well, what about movies?
Movies, yes. I mean, when I was old enough to go to movies on my own, I remember It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, and that was probably one of the earliest funny films I saw.
But Mel Brooks, Gene Wilder.
But also I remember Jacques Tati.
Oh yes.
And
Monsieur Hulot.
Well, Monsieur Hulot's Holiday was one of my father's favourite films, and I remember him and my mum always talking about it and saying that was in Monsieur Hulot.
But that was mine.
Well, it was, yes. And then I saw it on television one Sunday, and it was hilarious. I absolutely loved it. And then when video came along, I just went out and got all of Jacques Tati's movies. Now, nothing was ever as funny as Monsieur Hulot, but there was still...
Except Mr. Bean, years
Mr.
later.
Bean was actually, yes, a lot of people probably don't appreciate that Mr. Bean is actually based on a lot of similar kind of characters, but Monsieur Hulot was one of the originals, and it was
Definitely.
it was wonderfully subtle, and the slapstick was intelligent as well, and I just really loved that. But there was and then we got the Mel Brooks films, as you say, remember those? They were quite raucous, and whenever a new film came out, I'd go and see that. So I was always drawn to whatever it was with comedy. But comedy evolved, and then in the 80s we had this alternative comedy scene, which I used to follow. And I remember going to see the Comedy Store, the comic strip, and these comedians like Rick Mayall and Adrian Edmondson, Nigel Planer. Then they obviously developed The Young Ones, which was a TV show in the 80s. And
What about Monty Python?
Monty Python, yeah, that was a massive influence on my school, because it was so different to anything. The Goodies were on at the same time. Goodies were kind of a light version, still a bit surreal, but when you watch that, we all sort of realised there's comedy that came out of it absolutely nowhere, and the kids used to repeat all the scenes, the lines, the parrot sketch, and all the the idiosyncratic aspects of the of Monty Python, even to the point of actually trying to understand what the name Monty Python meant. But of course, it meant nothing. I wrote to the BBC to the Monty Python producers just to ask them, because it was so anarchic, and it was they were so clever. I wanted to find if there was a deeper meaning to what this comedy there was.
Did they reply?
Yes, they did. They said,
what did they say?
Well, I think, if I recall correctly, it was said, no, there's nothing more to it than just a load of people who got together just trying to make people laugh, and that was it.
And you even remember the Goons.
Remember the Goons?
That's going back, isn't it?
Yeah, that was what it was very. I remember them. Also, Spike Milligan was, and his books. I used to read his books as well. He was remarkable.
Yeah.
So comedy was all a thing running right the way through what I did. Now, when I saw sort of stand-ups, I think the earliest stand-ups that were very different were even Woody Allen in his heyday, doing stand-up in the 60s. We didn't really see much of that till recordings came in, so you could see more. There wasn't much of that.
Do you know all about the Catskills?
I know the Catskills was a scene where comics used to.
Everybody, they all started in the Catskills.
Yes.
Every one of the Americans, Billy Crystal, all of them, right. Even Danny Kaye. Yeah. They
did the circuit, didn't they?
Yeah. What I really want to know is how you used comedy, or how comedy has influenced your business life. We'll talk about that in part 2.